Back in February, Israel launched its version of a vaccine passport called the Green Pass. Everyone who wanted to get into indoor concerts, sporting events, or even restaurants and gymnasiums had to show proof that they had been vaccinated. That could be a piece of paper or a document on your phone with a barcode that could be verified, but seldom was. There was apparently no evidence of forgery. Jerusalem's former deputy mayor and Knesset member Rachel Azaria says there was some skepticism at the beginning, but people quickly accepted the system.
We've had COVID for so long. The lockdown was so long that, the feeling that you can go back to life is it's unbelievable. I mean, the fact that we just went back to what we've always had before, I think people realized that it was worth it.
Unvaccinated restaurant customers were not turned away. They just had to sit outside, sometimes in these custom bubbles to protect from the weather. Children and others unable to get a vaccine could always show proof of a recent negative test instead.
The Green Pass, it wasn't to exclude people or, to differentiate between those that got the vaccine and those that didn't. It was used as an incentive to make sure that people go and get the vaccine, and it worked.
Now Israel has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, around 60% of the population with both doses. Last week, the country was celebrating Pride Day, and things looked almost back to normal. Canada is considering a similar vaccine plan. What advice would you give?
To give people the feeling that they're part of a community and that it's a communal effort. It's not only for yourself.
Canada's first tentative step in this direction came with the recent Toronto Maple Leafs playoff game against the Montreal Canadiens. Healthcare workers attending had to be vaccinated to gain entry. The latest public opinion surveys show that Canadians strongly support requiring vaccines to board an aircraft, 79% in favor for international travel. But that support drops considerably when it comes to domestic use of vaccine passports to enter restaurants and other locations, only 55% in favor of that. Vaccine passport supporters, like University of Ottawa epidemiologist Rewat Dionandan, realize they have a hill to climb in convincing Canadians.
It's going to make things more difficult in terms of public buy-in and create some more discontentment and division in society, without question. But the bottom line is, do we want to accelerate a return to normal? This is the way to do so, or one way to do so. Again, Israel has shown us how to do this. Other countries have shown us how to do this as well.
Israel is also a society that is comfortable with conscripting everyone into military service. That's something that Canadians would probably have different views about. So I think it's a different society.
Kara Zweibel is the Fundamental Freedoms Program Director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
We are typically a liberal democratic society, and this is a shift to a society where it's a show me your papers society, and we're much better off encouraging people and educating people who are hesitant about being vaccinated than ostracizing them and socially sorting them in a way that means that they can't be out and participating in social life.
So I understand these concerns. I share them to a large extent. Like I'm a non-white immigrant. Like the idea of being stopped and asked for my papers is disconcerting to me. But the difference here is this is temporary and is to grant me access to services, and I can get these papers. Right? Getting it is not a hardship. That's the important part.
There is also a concern of sharing private health information and how temporary this would be.
I do see it as a slippery slope. I think that some people have talked about this idea as a temporary idea, something that we would do until we reach herd immunity. But there is no magic number here. We haven't been told that. No one can tell us when we're going to reach that point, if ever.
We are trying to incentivize and encourage vaccination. So we're saying things like, if you vaccinate, you can do all of these wonderful things that society has to offer, like attend a sporting event. And if you don't vaccinate, you got to go through a couple of extra steps, like get a negative swab test. So it's a slight disincentive that has the that has the result of encouraging vaccination, but it doesn't exclude people who haven't been vaccinated. It just requires more of them.
Now several Canadian universities, including the University of Toronto, Western University, and Fanshawe College in London, Ontario, have decided to require proof of vaccine for any student who intends to enter residence for the fall term. Fanshawe's Vice President of Student Services, Michel Baudouin.
If we don't have a vaccine program, then we won't be able to open the common areas. Students will be restricted similar to the way they are now. They will be more confined to rooms. They won't be able to go into lounges or open common spaces.
Bruce Springsteen is returning to Broadway with his one-man show in July. Only fully vaccinated people will be allowed in.
Torres rips one in the air, deep left field.
New York State has implemented the Excelsior Pass, which will allow vaccinated people to attend large sporting events and movie theaters. Meanwhile, Governor Ron DeSantis has outlawed vaccine passports in Florida, and many red state governors are moving in the same direction.
We followed freedom, and that's the reason why Florida's doing better.
At the federal level, President Biden will not issue vaccine passports, but will allow private sector businesses to require them.
As people start to travel again, perhaps this summer, if everything goes well, it would make sense for us to align with partners around the world on some sort of proof of vaccination or vaccine certification.
In Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau seems in favor of vaccine proof for international travel, but not for domestic use, while his chief science advisor, Mona Nemer, totally supports the idea. The provinces are split.
There is no mandatory vaccines and no vaccine passports in Alberta, and nor will there be, a period, full stop.
Alberta's Jason Kenney is totally against, along with Bonnie Henry and the BC government, while Nova Scotia's Premier Ian Rankin and the Quebec government are all for it.
I don't see why we could not have, as I mentioned earlier, what we call the QR code.
Vaccine passports are almost certain to appear in Canada for international travel, but it is anyone's guess how extensive will be their domestic use. Meanwhile, back in Israel, the Green Pass system was suspended on June 1st. With daily case numbers in the teens, it is no longer required there. Terrence McKenna, CBC News, Toronto.